Hey there, weavers. Today I'm winding some skeins of yarn into some balls for my upcoming rigid heddle class, and I thought it would be a good time to go ahead and do a tutorial. So today we are taking some skeins, and so these are just from the Woolery, and I am turning them into balls so that they're a little bit easier to work from and to wind our shuttles from. Now, a lot of times I buy my weaving yarn on cones, which is very common for weaving yarn, but for this class I go with the skein 100% wool that I have here, and that's just because that's kind of the way it works out for my class. But because of that, I have a bunch of skeins of yarn that need to be turned into a more manageable solution for warping and winding. So today we're going over how to use the umbrella swift and how to use the ball winder to turn this into this. Now, in order to create a ball of yarn, you don't necessarily need a ball winder and an umbrella swift. And that's because you can do this with other things like nestapines or even a knitting needle, or even just sitting on the ground with your skein of yarn spread across your knees and winding it into a ball by hand. And all of those options are totally valid and work really well too. This one's just a little bit faster, and honestly, it's kind of fun. So today we're doing the faster option. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our skein of yarn, and I'm going to take off my tag. Now, your skein of yarn might have a slightly different type of tag, but either way, whatever tag it has, just take it off, and then I want you to keep it and just set it aside, because we're going to come back to this and we will actually use that. But we're going to open up our skein so it just sort of untwists and opens up to become a big old loop. Now, this is what I was saying earlier, where if you were going to put this across your knees, then you would just open up your knees and open it like this, basically. And what that's going to do is it's going to keep it nice and tight, and it's also going to keep things from getting all tangled. And then you would just wind it by hand. But to put it on our umbrella swift, I have my umbrella swift open. You can either have it slightly less open and just make sure to tighten it when you're done, or you can have it basically where you need it and just make sure to pull your yarn over it. You do want it sitting about in the middle. Usually there's a little bit of a concave area, and that's where the yarn is going to sit. Now, I am going to tighten this up just a tiny bit, and ooh, yeah, it's squeaking a little, and that's just my umbrella swift. So let's see. Okay, that's a little bit better. So the next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and untie our skein. So your skein is probably going to have at least 3 of these ties on it. Sometimes it's a different yarn, sometimes it's the same yarn, but what you're looking for is some vertical yarn across the horizontal pieces. And we want to take those off because otherwise it's not going to come undone. And so a lot of times they will be put into a half bow, and the easiest way to undo a half bow is to go ahead and pull on the tails, not the loops, but the tails, and it should just pop right off like that. And you can set these aside. You can keep those if you want for scraps for whatever reason. I mean, they're good yarn, but they're just too small to actually be weaving with. So then we are just going to go around and we're going to find the other one. So again, I'm just going to pull the tails to take that off. And then you will also have the one that's going to hold the ends of your yarn. So those are the ones that we're actually going to pull from when we create our ball. And again, it is just half bows. They're just a little bit thicker, but they're going to undo the same way. I'm going to grab those short tails, pull, and that comes undone. Find the piece that comes off, and then we're going to find the pieces, the 2 ends. You should have 2 ends. You can choose whichever one you want to start. It doesn't actually matter, but I am going to choose this one because it's closer to me, and I'm taking a look at it, and it actually is coming from underneath the skein, so towards the umbrella swift as opposed to towards me, and I don't want that. I actually want it on the outside so that it will turn easier and everything will be a lot smoother when we put it onto the ball winder. Now, to get it on the other side, it's just as simple as flipping it over, and do that all the way around. Ooh, still squeaking a little bit. Okay. And then we're going to pull. We see it's coming from the outside now. at least for the most part. Now it's wanting to flip a little bit, but okay, well, we're gonna flip it one more time then. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes you just have to kind of play with it to get it into the exact position you want. Sometimes you get lucky and it's exactly where it needs to be on the first go round, but we're not always that lucky. And now that's exactly what we want, coming from the outside, no twisting or anything like that. So next we need to attach our yarn to the ball winder so it can actually wind our yarn. And we're gonna do that by putting it through this little metal piece right here. Now there's two ways you can do that. You can either just thread it through the middle, kind of like a needle, or you can follow the metal piece and come through there like that. And so the way I did that is I came underneath, and there is a sort of opening right here. Bring that through the opening, twist it around, and it is through the middle. And then I'm going to take my tail here and I'm just going to press it down into this notch. And that should keep it where we want it to be without it falling out while we are winding. If it does end up falling out after we have a good little bit actually wound, it's not a big deal and you can just let that happen. If it tries to fall out at the beginning, then it's not going to wind. But we should be good to go. And I want you to pay attention to whether or not your ball winder has a direction. So mine has a little arrow that's telling me to turn it clockwise. So I'm gonna make sure to do that. And yours might be different, but mine says to go clockwise. So I'm gonna go ahead and I usually start out kind of slow to make sure this piece doesn't just pop off. But I'm gonna turn it clockwise. And I usually hold on to the yarn as I go. Now that's technically what this piece is for. This is your tension piece, and that's what's going to keep your yarn nice and smooth without getting all bumpy and everything like that, so you have a nice clean ball. But I always like to add a little bit of extra tension. I figure it can't hurt, it can only help. So that's, you'll see my hand over here holding it out, and that's just gonna give me that little bit of something extra. And so as I go slow here, you can see it start to develop that sort of signature ball pattern that you see on wound balls of yarn. Like this, you can see it's very crisscrossed. That's just starting to develop. And then once you are seeing that develop and nothing's falling off, you are pretty much good to go. You can wind as fast or as slow as you want. And that's what's really nice about this. I can just keep going nice and fast because the umbrella swift is going to do, it's just going to turn as I turn the ball winder. Now, if you have a good skein of yarn, then usually you can just keep going like this all the way till the end. Every once in a while, the skein will be still kind of twisted like it was in the beginning, and you might get stuck. So for example, let me slow down. Let me slow down for a second. Sometimes this leader yarn here will somehow end up on the inside again, and my specific ball winder has these little rivets or whatever you want to call them, these little metal pieces right here, and sometimes it will get stuck on that. And so you just want to be careful that if that happens, you fix it quickly so you're not putting tension on the yarn that it doesn't need, so we don't break that. And we also don't want to put any weird tension on our ball winder or our umbrella swift, because we don't want to break those either, because this stuff ain't cheap, as I'm sure you know. So all's looking good here, so we're just going to keep going. get towards the end, I will usually slow down a little bit so that the yarn doesn't come and like smack me in the face or anything like that. And then as I get to the end, I'm just going to take that tail and I'm going to find a spot on my ball and I'm just going to tuck it in. So really anywhere is fine. Just find a piece that is crossed over, tuck that in, and that's just going to keep things from unraveling. I'm kind of doing this at a weird angle. Okay, there we go. So just like that. And then we're going to take that tag. So remember I said to hold on to your tag. And even if your tag doesn't look like this, even if it's like one smaller piece, that's totally fine. What we're going to do with this is we are going to fold this into quarters, or something about this size. It's probably about 1 inch across or so. I'm going to use this to put in the middle of my ball, and I'm going to do that for 2 reasons. First reason is that way when I get towards the end of the yarn, I will know exactly what it was, and it's easier to reorder if that's something I want to do. But also because it's going to keep things nice and clean and make it easier to find that center piece to pull out for our center pull yarn ball. And so I'm just going to kind of stick this in the middle here where I have the plastic piece, pull up, and have that slide right into place. And that's the whole tutorial. So just fun and fast on how to turn a skein of yarn like this into a ball of yarn like this with just an umbrella swift and a ball winder. So until next time, happy weaving.